This is the presentation for Chapter 6 in the Rothermel textbook on business strategies. In this presentation, I will briefly reiterate the distinctions between different levels of strategy and then cover generic strategic positions, value propositions, and the strategy canvas. Each of these concepts helps describe a firm's go-to-market initiatives and how it pursues success relative to competitors. First, it is helpful to differentiate business strategy from other levels of strategy. The broadest level of strategy is corporate strategy. As discussed in Chapter 8, it involves deciding in which industries to operate. If a firm participates in just one industry, as is the case for most firms, corporate strategy is not pertinent. Business strategies, the topic of this course in general, considers how firms pursue superior organizational performance within a particular industry. We'll continue to talk about this for the remainder of the presentation. Subsumed under business strategies are more fine-grained levels of strategy. Functional strategies drive the activities and investments of a particular function in support of a business strategy. That is, functional strategies examine how each area will aid the firm's overall performance. Even deeper, operational strategies, which also could be called tactics, are activities that, in turn, support the functions. Graphically, the four types of strategies cascade with one another to form an organizational pyramid. At the top, corporate strategy, or deciding which industries to join, is the domain of CEOs. Presidents run businesses, vice presidents manage functional areas, and directors or managers run operations within those functions. The expectation is that the levels above give guidance, resource, and support to the subsumed levels, and the subsumed levels contribute to the performance of the whole. On to strategic positions. While wildly general, as the term generic indicates, these terms give firms a starting point, an overall structure for developing detailed go-to-market initiatives. Recall from Chapter 3 that Porter's Five Forces model is an economics tool, not directly a strategic analysis tool. Its purpose is to understand market forces that influence an industry's overall level of profitability. Strategists use the results of the Five Forces model to identify strategic positions or niches in the marketplace in which the firm is most likely to generate strong performance. To facilitate that transition between the Five Forces model and strategic positions, Porter outlined two generic strategic positions, cost leadership and differentiation, and two levels of scope, narrow and broad, that might serve as the foundation for those more detailed strategic plans. A generic strategy, in other words, is the skeleton on which all other strategic decisions will be made. It sets a perspective, a discipline for all other decisions, and signals to everyone, employees and customers alike, what the firm is all about. Before adding detail to cost leadership and differentiation, I want to further describe the shift in perspective that is inherent in this conversation. To this point, most of what we have covered in this course centers on finding the theoretical basis for what firms choose to do. Chapter 1 discussed the vital role of key stakeholders in establishing why the firm exists and what it wants to achieve. And Chapters 3 and 4 discussed the Five Forces model, the resource-based view, and strategic activity systems, the fundamental strategic analysis models for understanding why firms engage in the activities and make the investments that they do. What these chapters have not discussed directly are the product and services that are the result of these decisions and the channels through which they are distributed. When Porter described the generic strategies, he did so in terms of how a firm's product and services are viewed by its potential customers and whether or not those outputs were good enough to win business over competing options. The key point to remember here is that the products and services that a firm sells are really the consequences of earlier strategic decisions, actions, and investments. All of these facets of a firm's business strategies are inextricably tied to one another. The next few slides detail the elements of generic strategies. I'll start with cost leadership. Cost leadership strategies are based on offering acceptable products and services at low prices. Firms pursuing cost leadership positions do their best to make their activities as efficient as possible when producing products and services that meet the needs of value-seeking customers, all the while driving enough volume to generate reasonable returns even at tight margins. The spread between the cost structure and the prices that the products and services support equals the firm's profitability. In this graphic from the text, Firm B is the clear winner. Its cost structure is superior to Firm A, and customers value its products more than Firm C. To be good at this strategy, the pressure to lower costs, in most cases, can be extreme. Here are recent value meal advertisements from Wendy's, Burger King, and McDonald's. In my mind, they offer an extraordinary amount of food for just a few dollars. Making a profit at this combination of quantity of food versus price being charged requires cutting out any other cost that does not support buying decisions. At the same time, these firms invest huge sums into advertising and promotions in order to drive the volume of sales needed to make this strategy work. On the other side of the coin are differentiation strategies. Here, the strategy is to offer upgraded features to products and services to differentiate them from competing low-cost options, and to do so in a way that the firm can charge more for the features than it costs for them to add them. The game is still to pursue a spread between cost and value, but by commanding higher prices rather than minimizing costs. Here again, Firm B is the winner. Automobiles are an example of the pursuit of differentiation strategies. Take the difference between sedans offered by Chevy and Mercedes. Essentially, Mercedes is asking customers to pay more than double the price for a car that is about the same size and shape as the Chevy. Doing so means convincing customers that the styling, feature, and quality of the car is worth the upcharge. Last, focus is a modifier to both cost leadership and differentiation strategies. It considers the range of products and services within an industry that a firm will offer. As an easy example, consider the varying scopes of degree programs from local universities. SCAD has chosen a very narrow focus, concentrating on art and design. Dalton State, slightly broader, but it only offers undergraduate programs. Kennesaw State, with its huge number of programs across undergraduate, master's, and doctorate levels, would be an example of a broad competitive scope. In more practical terms, a firm's generic business strategies are more familiarly articulated as its value proposition. A value proposition is a simple expression of why a customer would choose to do business with one firm over other available alternatives. Value propositions come in a variety of forms, especially at different levels of detail. I'll list 3 here. A starting point is when a firm simply lists the advantages it can provide its customers in the all benefits form of value propositions. This would be the equivalent of a restaurant publishing a menu that they hope tempts people to eat there. In points of difference, the firm goes beyond just listing the benefits by demonstrating how its products and services are different, presumably better or cheaper, than its competitors. For example, perhaps an Italian restaurant imports a special prosciutto directly from Italy that no other restaurant offers. That would be a differentiator from competing restaurants. The third type of value proposition, resonating focus, shifts from what the firm can deliver to its ability to understand the needs and wants of its customers and then tailor their offerings to meet those demands. Resonating focus results when a firm can assert to its customers that it is providing exactly what the customer wants rather than generic products or services. This is where deep connections between a firm and its customers can be created. In the restaurant example, this might happen when the restaurant goes beyond just offering good food to building good relationships, such as when employees greet you by your name and preferred meals and make you feel at home. At the end of the chapter, the text discusses one of my favorite strategic management tools, the Strategy Canvas. The Strategy Canvas visually depicts the differences between firms in a way that highlights their choices about generic strategies. Along the vertical axis are elements that are important to customer buying decisions. In this case, the number of services offered by an airline and their route structures. Along the vertical axis is the amount of investment that firms put into those elements. Notice that a lower investment should not be assumed to be a bad thing, since the lower investment could lead to lower prices for customers. The vertical scale is high or low, not good or bad. Then the task is to map individual firms onto the canvas. The differences in the line will help highlight the separations in the firm's value propositions to customers. While the example in a text depicted here combines legacy and low-cost airlines into single lines, the strategy canvas is typically used to map individual firms. Its worth is in graphically depicting the strategic differences among firms based on characteristics that matter to buying decisions. In doing so, the strategy canvas can demonstrate why some firms run into problems. The author uses the canvas, in this case, to suggest that JetBlue is in a bad spot. Because its profile vacillates between the legacy and low-cost airlines, one could argue that its strategic profile is stuck in the middle, so that it can be outcompeted on either side. For customers wanting full service, the legacy airlines will typically win because JetBlue falls short on elements such as connections and customer service. On the other hand, it also is likely to lose out to low-cost airlines because it can't offer the same low fares that those competitors do. The differences inherent in the choices between low-cost and differentiation strategies and broad and narrow competitive scopes, as well as just about any other strategic decision, highlights the trade-offs that firms must make when developing their strategies. Trade-offs are similar to opportunity costs and economics that arise when an actor can expend resources only once, so the choice to use an asset in one way precludes alternatives. Trade-offs in strategic management arise when pursuing one set of strategic initiatives precludes the pursuit of others, even if they would be attractive in some way. Here are a couple of examples. Nordstrom's is known for upper-scale product lines and top-shelf service. It sure would be confusing to walk into Nordstrom's and see lots of red tag specials. This is exactly why the firm created its Nordstrom Rack stores, a spin-off that can sell lower-priced goods without clouding the firm's position in its core market. Similarly, Chick-fil-A is not set up to offer table services like non-fast food restaurants, and Vanguard is firmly entrenched on the low-fee side of the brokerage business. Even if these firms wanted to expand their service offerings, the previous decisions, actions, and investments made by them would make it very hard for these companies to get outside their lanes. To summarize, a key takeaway from this presentation on generic strategies is to note the importance of making clear and disciplined decisions about the market position that a firm wants to establish. That low-cost or differentiated position then drives the trajectories that influence other strategic decisions down the line. The distinctions must be stark enough to demonstrate separation from competing firms, and the strategy canvas is an excellent tool for visualizing these distinctions. If they are not strong enough, or the distinctions do not resonate with customers, then the firm is at risk of being stuck in the middle or outcompeted by firms with clearer value propositions. And this concludes the presentation for Chapter 6.